There's a TV show that was popular, I don't know, in the mid 2000s, 2010 something. Yeah, Community. You watched it last night? I know it's had a good amount of staying power. Super fun, hilarious episodes. The creator of the show was doing a lot of like meta episode stuff. There's some really cool if you like TV that's about paintball, Dude, well, I'm about to quote from one of those episodes. Yeah, a few paintballs more. Is that the one you watched? I mean, maybe it was. Was it the one? Oh, well, Trevor. You know the quote probably then. Community follows. Oh, no, back up. Go back. Go back. There we go. No. Don't go to it yet. Community is a TV show that follows a group of disparate and different people from different walks of life who all find themselves together at a place called Greendale Community College. And I think it's in Colorado, right? Out in sort of a nowheresville part of Colorado. I don't mean that negatively. If you're listening and you're from a nowheresville, there's no nowheresville. I'm just, in the world of the show, that's all. If I offended you, you can let me know. And they all end up sort of, not, they didn't want to end up there, but they end up at a local community college. And they, in the show, Greendale Community College is it's a mess. It's mismanaged, it's poorly run, the classes are a joke, the school's falling apart. It's basically like every single episode through like all 6 seasons, it's like the school could close tomorrow. It just is a total mess. And the show sort of talks about Greendale, and the characters talk about Greendale in a way where it's like none of us sort of wanted to end up here. Something went wrong in our lives, and that's why we're here. And so that's just sort of the world of the show and this place. But over time, you begin to see people's fondness for the place grow and for their relationships with one another, the people that they've met. And a weird thing begins to happen, like your fondness for the place begins to grow. And there's a moment in one of these episodes, maybe the episode that Trevor watched last night, where Pierce Hawthorne, who's played by Chevy Chase, who's a totally unlikable, angry, hard to welcome guy. I mean, he's a total jerk. He's incredibly selfish. He's the guy like in the friend group that nobody really wants to be there. It just is. He's a really, really difficult person. And at one point in this episode, all the other characters are sort of trashing Greendale. You can pick that up and not feel bad about it. Whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to do. They're sort of trashing Greendale. And all of a sudden, from this unlikely source comes this strong defense of Greendale and why Greendale matters. This is what Pierce says to them while they're trashing this place. He says, I've been coming to the school for 12 years. I've never been friends with anyone here more than a semester. I guess I assume eventually I'll be rejected, so I test people and push them until they prove me right. It's a sickness, I admit it, but this place has always accepted me, sickness and all. This place accepted all of you, sickness and all. It's worth thinking about. As you're watching the show, you're watching these people in this place where they're like, we didn't want to end up here. And you look at it and there's nothing about Greendale where you're like, I want to be there. And yet something happens as you watch the characters in the show where you go, they have something that I want. I kind of do want to be at Greendale. Why? Right? What is it? And what do they find? They find community there. Name of the show. And why do we want community so badly? Why are we all longing for a place that is sort of in the description that Pierce just said, a place that accepted me, sickness and all, a place that accepted me even in the places where I was difficult to welcome? Why do we long for that, and why do we want that so badly? And why is it so difficult for us to find? Like, why do our relationships in community go wrong so often? And instead of having longevity in community relationships over time, we sort of bounce from relationship to relationship. We bounce from community to community. Maybe in part because we do things like Pierce does. We sort of show up to community, and then over time we're like, you know what? I'm going to start to test them with this thing and this thing and this thing. And we sort of have this cynical view. We're like, they'll just prove me right over time, and this won't be that lasting thing. Why do we actually bring sometimes some of the worst parts of ourselves to our community relationships? How do we do relationships well in community, in the specificity of community? This is the question we're going to be asking today. I've titled today's sermon, Can't My Community Just Get Along? We're in the middle of a sermon series titled, Can't We All Just Get Along? I think that's it. I just spoke it. I'm hoping that's it. Can't we all just get along? Oh, yeah, it says in the thing. Yeah, oh, that really cool little graphic mark that Andrew created. I thought that was super cool. Yeah, I know. He's not here to receive that praise, but you can tell him when you see him next. Yeah, so we're in a sermon series called Can't We All Just Get Along? We're looking for biblical wisdom for forming and keeping quality relationships. Last week, we looked sort of big picture on relationships, where they come from, why God created relationships, and why they matter. And this week, we're looking specifically at quality relationships in community. How do we have relationships with other people in community that are meaningful, that are healthy, and that are well, and why are they important? Our scripture today is going to be 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 14 to 20. Again, that's 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 14 to 20. If you have a Bible or a device, I'd encourage you to flip there and follow along as I'm reading the text. Can you just put the sermon series title slide on? Yeah, there we go. Leave that up there and then switch to it when I'm on specific ones. That way there's no spoilers. You don't know where we're going. That way you don't know. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 14 to 20. I'll read the text aloud. For the body does not consist of one member, but of many. If the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. If the ear should say, because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would be the sense of hearing? If the whole body were an ear, where would be the sense of smell? But as it is, God arranged the members in the body, each one of them, as he chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, yet one body. Everyone says they want community. Our world is a world that is full of problems, and community is increasingly sort of offered as like a buzzword kind of solution for all sorts of problems that we have in the world and that the world faces. So, for example, if someone's experiencing mental health problems, we'll talk about the need for more community for people so that we can be mentally well. When people have parental problems, we talk about it takes a village to raise a child. We need more community for parents. When we talk about political problems, we talk about fighting community erosion. The state of our politics is so toxic because our communities have broken down. We talk about global problems, and we talk about solving them through a stronger global community where people are working together to solve problems. In all of these problems, there's this sort of refrain that comes up in our popular discourse about how to solve them, and it basically is more community. More community, more community, more community, more community will help to solve all different kinds of problems that our world faces. And it's interesting because the proposal of the solution, more community, sort of implicitly assumes that our communities are not working the way that they should. Right? If we're talking about a problem that we're seeing in globally or just in some particular realm, and we say, well, maybe community is the solution to that, what we're really saying is better community is the solution to that. If just raw community were the solution, then, there's some sort of community around basically everything, and the problem would be solved. So we're sort of looking at it saying more community, really as better community or healthier community would be the solution to this problem. And so community seems to be also part of the problem. Right? Part of the problem is, the quality of our communities. Before we dig too deep, however, on how community can be a solution to problems, let's ask the question, what is a community? You hear the word community and something immediately pops to your mind. You have immediate thoughts about what it is that we're talking about. Etymologically, the word community is the Latin prefix con or com, meaning with or bringing together parts, plus the word unity, which of course means unity. You know what that word means. It's with unity with, or unity with multiple parts. This is exactly what the Bible envisions community is through the metaphor of the body. This is what Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 14. For the body does not consist of one member, but of many. Body is a metaphor for community, and a unity of many members could save the world. If we had a real body that was addressing the problems that we see in the world, maybe we would have really something to go with. And this is what we want. We want to be part of exactly what's talked about in this text. We want to be part of a body. We want to have unity with other people. And when we look at our lives and we look at the world, we long for ourselves and for other people to have a place to belong, to be in community, to know other people and to be known themselves in a unity that is with the coming together of many different parts. And so the idea of community, and in particular the metaphor of the body and belonging to a body, is something that we all see and perceive is a good and something that we want in our lives and in our world. You want community. You want to belong to a body. You say you want community. You say you want to belong to a body. Is community really what we want? We all say that we want to belong to a body. We want community. But do we really? Let's look for a second at the kind of communities that people are joining and seeking out today, and see what it reveals about the kind of community that we really want. There are a variety of researchers who research and write about something that they call the privatization of community. Over the last century or so, there's been a general demise of truly accessible public community institutions, whether they're religious groups or secular societies. Think like the community around a community center or a YMCA, a place that was a truly accessible public institution where truly different people from different places in society would be able to come together and find unity. And as those things have gone downhill, as those institutions have suffered an increasing demise, there's been a rise in different sort of boutique spaces or communities, social spaces or experiences that we can elect to join, often at significant cost, or where our community is leveraged in pursuit of something else, where community becomes a means on the way to some other end. So think, for example, the cool boutique fitness studio, where you're kind of going for some community, but there's like a pay-to-play element, and the community is really serving this other thing that everyone else is pursuing. Think, for example, that cool new community-oriented co-working space you have access to that's built to look like it's about relationships, but really it's about getting you caffeinated so that you'll help your company make money. Right? Think about those sorts of spaces. And in the rise of these sort of privatized boutique communities, there's been a decline of true third spaces. Right? A third space being a space that's not home and that is not work, where you can just go and be and build relationship. There's an article in The Atlantic writing on this, and this is what they say about the decline of true third spaces and the rise of these sort of boutique communities. So what's replaced hangouts in the city? Ersatz third places, or substitute third spaces, fake third spaces. Establishments that are either too expensive for the average American or apparently designed to de-incentivize lingering. Think carefully curated faux dive bars that serve $15 beer and shot specials, or parks like New York's Highline that are built to be moved through in a linear fashion. Co-working spaces and corporate amenities such as employee-only coffee shops tap the aesthetics and function of a cafe, plush seating, the availability of caffeine to insidiously extract more productivity from workers. And the possibility of a wildly unexpected encounter is slim, given that most people in attendance will be in roughly the same socioeconomic stratum because they work in similar jobs. Some are even removing the sort of shared activity around the pay-to-play space and are just making pay-to-play boutique relationship spaces. There's one such studio in NYC. You can get what it calls a workout for your relationships. And for $165 a month, you can attend a gather, where you sit in a circle in a boutique space and have a highly curated relational experience. One person writing for a New York magazine went to the space and wrote this about it. In the gather room, the aesthetic is West Elm seance. Yeah! Yes! We all know what that is, and we all have been searching for the words, and we have them now. Thank God for this writer. West Elm Seance. Dimly lit, floor covered by a jute rug, the world's biggest candle burning a little too close to the world's biggest paper lamp. A dozen chairs are arranged in a circle. Someone starts to play Coldplay. We're led through a bit of deep breathing, and it begins. The author goes on to recount some of their experiences and then concludes this. After my first gather, I attended 2 more, both virtually. By my third, I still wasn't sure what I was doing. I wasn't making friends. On my way out of the studio, I was confronted by the merch shop and all its ornamental, expensive, useless bottles of colored liquid. I considered buying one as a souvenir. Are these spaces really community? No. We know that the answer to that is no. Maybe they meet at some times and in some ways some community needs that we have in some moments. But if we really look at them, we know that something is wrong and that something is missing. What is wrong with these spaces? Why aren't they community? And it could be any number of things, but there's at least one thing that is wrong. Everyone there is essentially the same. Everyone in these spaces is there because they're there to be with other people who are the same as them and there for the same reasons. Privatized pay-to-play community spaces exist to attract a certain kind of person and to exclude others and then to build on that exclusivity a fake kind of community that is built not around welcoming different members but essential sameness. And we all hear that and we go, well, that's gross. That's not true community. Then why are these spaces so popular? And why, when you are looking for a gym membership, you're maybe checking out a boutique fitness studio, and why, when you're looking for somewhere to be on the weekend, you're attracted to the faux dive bar? Why are we drawn to the popularity of these places if we know instinctively that they're gross? Why are we actually attracted to them? We're attracted to them because if we are honest, we love fake community. And we actually kind of hate true community. We love fake community because fake community is built on sameness and true community is a unity among members that are different. And we would simply rather be in fake community with a bunch of people who share some essential likeness with me. We say we long for community, but in reality, we long for a fake community where we don't have to welcome other people. A body, a true community, is a unity of different members. This is what Paul is trying to communicate to the Corinthian church in our text today. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 19 to 20. If all were a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, yet one body. Paul's point is that a body is a unity of different members. If there were no difference in the members, the body would disappear. It wouldn't be a body. It would be some grotesque fleshly mass of 1 or 2 members stacked on top of each other over and over again. Yeah, it's gross. And we're about to see a picture that's going to freak you out. Paul's point is that the body exists only as a unity of different members. A unity of the same members is not a body. In the movie Doctor Strange, Dr. Stephen Strange, he's a doctor. He thinks he knows everything. Anyways, he goes to Camartage. Someone, knocks his astral self out of his physical self. He's flying through that. Anyway, lots to explain. He's floating through the quantum realm. And while he's doing that, he's seeing a bunch of weird and crazy things. And at one moment, he goes through this little moment where, I'm sure that the people who are making the movie are just like, what can we do that will really jar people to communicate difference? Because, I don't think that this is saying that, there are a bunch of hands in the quantum realm, But they go through this animation series where they're just like growing one piece of a body part on top of another over and over and over and over and over again. And at one point he looks down and this starts to happen with his hand. This is what it looks like in the movie, right? So his hand is growing out, and out of his fingers there are hands, and out of those fingers there are hands and hands. And just look at that for a second. Yeah, no one is going to like ask for a copy of this image later because they want to hang it up around their home. No one wants to, yeah, you're doing the weird, it's freaking you out a little bit. You're doing the thing. You're like, my hands, you know. It's weird. It's strange. But this is what it is like when we have fake community. It's not a body. This hands stacked on hands, stacked on hands, stacked on hands could never make a body. Ever. They could do some things very efficiently, like grab something. Sure. Nothing's going to be as good at grabbing something as that hand monstrosity. But it's not a body. It isn't. It's some fake, grotesque, fleshy, nasty thing. This is what fake community is like. A grotesque mockery of true community that's built on sameness. And it's really not just built on sameness, it's built on my need for sameness. In other words, my desire to have my life full of more of me. My wish that everyone around me was more like me. In fact, was like me. Like, we often don't want to be part of a body. We want to be part of some weird, fleshy, nasty thing where somehow it's my face around the whole thing. Everyone else is so like me that I basically feel like it's just me. I'm just welcoming myself while I'm welcoming other people. This is why true community is so difficult and why our relationships in community are so hard. Because we simply don't show up to community looking to welcome anyone other than me. We show up to community saying, how can I be welcomed here? How can I welcome myself here? How can I be welcoming myself in my welcome of other people? But we almost never show up going, how can I welcome someone, a person, a member of a body that is truly different from me? Paul is trying to get the Corinthian church to understand this because they are a church community. There are many things that are going well in the Corinthian church, and there are many things that are total sociological nonsense in the way that they're interacting with one another and the problems that they're facing. And so much of it is built on the fact that there is a large swath of the Corinthian church that does not know how to welcome someone who's really different from them. And so there's disunity in the body because some people don't want to be part of a body. They want to be part of that weird, nasty hand thing that we just saw. This is what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 12, 15 to 16. If the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less a part of the body. There are people who are essentially saying that who I am as a member of the body is what I wish this whole body were. And I don't need to have any part in people who are different or who bring something different, who are a different kind of member of this body than me. It's feet saying, I have nothing to do with hands. And it's hands saying, I have nothing to do with feet. This is why community relationships are so difficult. This particular posture. We basically show up saying, how is everyone in this community an extension of me, rather than saying, how can I welcome a member of this body? And this is why these relationships are so hard. When we show up to community, even communities that we think should be true community, we've learned our pattern of community relationships from all those fake communities that the world has offered us, and we bring those patterns of behavior into a space that could be true community, and we do all this fake stuff. We all really want flesh monsters of sameness rather than a true body made up of different members that welcomed each other in their difference. And this corrupts every community in their life, and it corrupts the church, and it has continued to corrupt the church. If we're really honest, very frequently churches are not bodies. They're not places where people have learned how to welcome members that are different than them. They're not true unity in difference with one another. They're fleshy samenesses where people are going to church looking for their sameness reflected in the rest of the church. I'm super political, so I want to go to the political church. I'm super intense for Jesus. I want everyone to be intense for Jesus. I'm going to go to the intense for Jesus church. I'm super cool, frankly. I walk around, I'm cool. I'm better than other people. I know I am. I dress well, and I want to go to the church where everyone else just gets that. And so I want to go to the cool church. And it's churches of hands looking for hands, and feet looking for feet, and eyes looking for eyes, and ears looking for ears. And the world can see it. Everyone can see it. How we're all just looking for ourselves in other people. And so our churches aren't bodies. They're hands growing out of hands, growing out of hands, growing out of hands. Have mercy. Absolutely. True communities are built on welcoming members that are different from oneself. And the problem is that no one does this in the world. No community in the world is offering true welcome. Every single community in the world, every single place you go to, jobs, families, cultures, everyone is welcoming people on the basis of some essential sameness that you have with me. Every human architect of every community ever is building some degree of fake community upon some fake foundation of sameness. The same people, the same gender, the same culture, the same ethnic background, the same ideas, the same politics, the same style of clothes, the same social status, the same financial means, the same age, the same. And so there is no true community. It doesn't exist in the world. Everyone is architecting fake communities based on how someone else is a reflection of me. Look at this story, Luke chapter 15, verses 1 and 2, about Jesus. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to hear him. And the Pharisees and the scribes grumbled, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." This man welcomes sinners and eats with them. Now, Jesus welcoming sinners, how nice of him. How good. Right? And that's what we often think. Like, wow, Jesus is, we're seeing how nice he is, how good he is. Sure, those things are true. But that's not primarily what is shocking or meaningful or full of gospel profundity about the fact that Jesus would welcome sinners. This text is profound. The welcome that Jesus is extending here is profound, earth-shattering, world-changing. Because in it, he welcomes something that is totally different from the nature and being of God. Jesus welcomes a person, welcomes a member, welcomes a being that has nothing in common with God whatsoever, namely what the Bible calls a sinner. Jesus is able in this text to welcome someone that is totally what God is not. There is one thing that God absolutely cannot welcome: sin. It is the only thing that God can't welcome. God is so holy and so full of joy. His laughter would just melt your existence if you could just hear the peal of his laugh. He's so full of life and love and fire, ushering into eternal life. And sin is the exact opposite of that. Sin is spiritual disease that ushers in all manner of pain and evil and wickedness and leads to death. It is the exact opposite of God, and it is the one thing that God cannot welcome or abide in any way. And yet God in Jesus Christ has found a way to welcome something that is totally different from him. And as God does that, he creates a community that has never existed before. A true community that is able to welcome members that are totally different from the chief member. It's never existed before until Jesus Christ died on the cross to heal us from sin and to take sin on himself, to make him the one who bears sin so that you don't have to, so that you could be welcome into the community of God. And when God did that, he made, for the first time, true community, because he welcomed the person that was impossible to be welcomed into the life of God, the person who sins. God has created true community, a true body in Jesus Christ. Paul says this in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 18, about the specificity with which God has arranged the body. As it is, God arranged the members in the body, each one of them as he chose. And God chose to create a body that was built on the true welcome of Jesus Christ and have Jesus be the head of that body, that all the rest of us might find our place in that body as a member that is in relationships of unity and difference with one another, but all of us together are looking at the head, Jesus, who has found a way to welcome us. By welcoming sinners specifically, God hasn't just done a good thing or a nice thing. He has created a new kind of community that has never existed before. And when we believe that God has welcomed us in that way, specifically as sinners, when we believe that God has welcomed us as sinners who are completely different from God, yet he found a way to welcome us anyway, that faith becomes spiritual power for us in our own life in community to show up to community wanting to welcome people who are different from me. Because God welcomed me when I was irretrievably different from him. When I believe that, that becomes spiritual life in me to say, how can I welcome somebody else who seems to be irretrievably different from me? God has welcomed us into true community in Jesus Christ. There are two specific aspects of this welcome that God has won for us in Jesus that we need to point out and learn from. The first aspect of this welcome is that Jesus entered into our experience. That's the first aspect of this welcome that God offered us. All throughout the Bible, God is trying to welcome humans by getting close to them, by entering into their experience, by being incarnationally with them. God looked at humans and saw that we were on earth, and he said, hey, I'll build a house there. I'll make a house there, and I'll be there, and you can come and visit me in my house. I'll welcome you into my house. God saw that we needed communication. We needed to be communicated with, and so he said, look, I'll give my words to people, and then they'll pass my words on, and they'll write them down, and we can talk that way. God saw us in a body, in flesh, and said, you know what? I can take on a body. I can get close to you and offer welcome. And he even did this with respect to our sin. The Bible says that Jesus became sin even though he knew no sin, that we might become the righteousness of God. He got close to us in our earthbound nature. He got close to us in our need for communication. He got close to us in our flesh. And he got close to us even in the way that we sin, by becoming sin for us that we might become like God. Jesus welcomed us by seeing our reality empathetically and entering into it. And the second way that Jesus welcomed us is that he paid the cost of welcome. Romans chapter 5, verse 8 says that God showed his love for us in this, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. There is almost always a cost when it comes to extending real welcome to someone who's truly different from me in order to create and belong in a true community. And the cost sometimes is small. Maybe it's just discomfort. Maybe I wish I was talking to that person instead I'm talking to this person. Maybe it's a small thing. Maybe it's a large thing. Maybe sometimes there's serious cost to pay when it comes to welcoming someone who's really different from us. And yet, the backbone of being able to extend real welcome that leads to true community is someone standing up saying, I will shoulder the cost of welcome here. God shouldered the cost of welcoming you. Jesus shouldered the cost of welcoming us. And when we receive that, we then say, if God has done that for me, I can shoulder the cost of welcoming somebody else. This is how true community happens and how we welcome people into true community and have relationships in our communities that are pursuing true community. We enter into unity in difference. We enter into that by trying to seek to understand the person that we are welcoming, by trying to get close to them, by trying to understand them, trying to understand different personalities, different cultures, different ideas, different ways of doing things. We come up against these differences and we say, how can I understand you, who you are, where you're coming from, because God did that for me. What welcome, by the way, is not in this place. This is what welcome is not. Welcome is not extending so much empathetic welcome to other people that I lose my distinctiveness about what I am in the body. This can kind of be gotten wrong in a couple different ways in the life of a church. Maybe there's a member of the body that just so believes in the value of what their particular member is adding to the body. And so out of their zeal, they're sort of implicitly trying to make everyone else like them in the body. Right? It's possible to welcome someone else in the difference of what they're offering to the body without saying, I'm like losing who I am in the body and what I'm offering in the body. Alongside extending this kind of welcome to other people, welcome is not like becoming unsafe or unwise in my welcome of other people. Sometimes we hear things about welcome, and we live in the world and in church communities and in a city, and we are like, I should be more welcoming. And sometimes we do that in a way where we just lose all sense of boundaries for myself, all sense of what's healthy, all sense of what's safe. Look, you should be wise in your welcome of other people, but there are always ways to be safe in the way that we welcome other people, but still find a way to extend welcome to somebody. The second thing that we do as a community is we pay the cost of welcoming. Welcome is difficult and costly. It costs my comfort. It costs what I'd rather be doing. It costs who I'd rather be with. Jesus paid the cost to welcome us by extending to us his body before we had earned the invitation of his body. The church, as the community that is spiritually alive through the power of that belief, is then the community that should be able to extend the same costly welcome to other people. Too often, churches are places where we look at people who are different who come in or who are hard to welcome. They have various needs or challenges. And too often, churches are looking at people like that, and we're sort of just saying to them, can't you just be easier to welcome? God, it would be so much better if you just did a little stuff, did some things beforehand to just make you easier to welcome here. We're done doing that. The church is the place that says, the bar will be raised for us. People who are spiritually alive through faith in God, people who are getting living power from God to extend costly welcome. We are the ones who will raise the bar to become better at welcoming other people so that we don't ever have to say to anybody, can you just be easier to welcome? We will get better at welcoming other people because God went to incredible lengths to be able to welcome us. God did not look at us and say, can you be easier to welcome? And frankly, it would have been perfectly fine for him to say that. Instead, he looked at us and said, how can I raise the bar for me to be able to welcome you however you come to me? And the church is that kind of place. And Vineyard Manhattan is going to be that kind of place. We talked about this last week. Vineyard Manhattan being a place of the wide open doors of faith, where you can come and belong here before you've earned any belonging, because Jesus offered us his body before we earned it. Everybody wants community. We all say we want true community, but in reality, we want fake counterfeits that are gross hands on hands and feet on feet. Just my sameness reflected in other people. But God has created the first true community with Jesus Christ as the head by welcoming people who are sinners, welcoming someone that is totally different from himself and his own nature. And when we believe that in our own lives, it becomes spiritual power personally, but spiritual power as the church to extend welcome to other people. Costly welcome that is full of empathy and understanding. And this creates in our lives and in our churches the stuff of real welcome that creates the true communities that we say we actually want to be a part of. Amen.